The snow began falling before first light, soft as breath against the cabin's warped window panes. By the time the sun bruised the sky, the white had thickened, obscuring the tree line and blurring the ridgeline into something that might have been smoke or sky or just the hush of winter folding in. It was the kind of snow that muffled the world, softened the shape of things, and made ghosts of even the living. She came from the east, riding hard. The mare's flanks were lathered, her nostrils flared with the kind of desperate rhythm that meant they'd been pushing past what was kind. The woman's coat was too thin for the mountain air, and her hat was more suited to prairie winds than the sharp bite of the high country. Still, she rode with a purpose, jaw set against the cold, eyes narrowed beneath the brim of a weather-worn hat. She didn't glance back. That would have taken more time than she could spare. Her name was Clara when she'd last had one worth keeping. Folks in 3 counties knew it, though they said it different now, in courtrooms, in whispers, in the sharp-edged tones of wanted posters nailed crooked to saloon walls. She stolen something, they said. Some said it was a horse, others a life. Truth was messier than that, and Clara had learned long ago that people preferred their stories simple and soaked in blood. The man who followed her didn't ride fast. He rode like someone who knew where she'd go and that she'd have to stop eventually. He wore a badge, though he kept it tucked beneath the folds of his duster like it shamed him more than it marked him. His horse was dark, steady, his eyes darker still. No one in the last town she'd passed had known his name, but one boy had muttered something as he watched the stranger pass. He ain't here for the law, he's here for penance. By mid-afternoon, Clara's horse gave out. She didn't curse, didn't cry, just dismounted with a kind of grim calm, knelt beside the mare's neck, and murmured thanks for the miles she'd given. The snow came heavier now, clinging to her lashes, her collar. Clara shouldered the pack she'd strapped to the saddle, pulled the rifle from its scabbard, and started west on foot. That night she found shelter beneath a rock outcrop. She built a fire small enough to be missed but hot enough to hold her hands over. She watched the flames until they blurred. Her body ached from riding, her feet burned with cold, and somewhere behind all that, the thrum of fear beat like a second heart. She wasn't afraid of dying. She'd been close to it before, too many times to count. What she feared was what came before, the choice, the moment, the hands reaching out to pull her back to what she'd escaped. She buried the sheriff's son herself, dug the grave with her own hands, said the words over him. She hadn't killed him. But that didn't matter to the man who'd once loved both of them like kin. Morning found her frostbitten and hungry, but alive. She kept walking. Miles behind her, the man in the duster stood where her mare had fallen. He knelt, pressed his gloved hand to the churned snow, then looked toward the trail she'd taken. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just straightened, adjusted his coat, and rode on. They would not meet yet, not quite, but the snow was drawing them closer. Snow and the old, unyielding pull of reckoning. By the 3rd day, Clara's boots were soaked through. The leather had split at the seams, and her socks were stiff with ice. Every step burned, but stopping would be worse. The trail she followed now was barely that, a deer path cutting through a black pine forest, the trunks like watchmen standing sentinel on either side. Wind carried through the trees in low, hollow sighs, and sometimes Clara imagined it speaking her name, soft and sorrowing. She crossed a stream iced over at the edges, broke through with her boot heel to drink. The water bit her lips like broken glass. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and kept walking. By late afternoon, the light had gone strange, lavender and gold against the snow. Clara smelled smoke, not the acrid kind of pursuit, but wood smoke, pine and birch, dry and slow burning. She paused, heart spiking not from fear but memory. She hadn't smelled a hearth fire in weeks, and that old scent made her feel, for one breathless second, like a girl again, when winters meant quilts and stew and someone humming low from the next room. She followed it against better judgment. Hunger won out over caution. It was a trapper cabin, small and lopsided, half sunk into the rise behind it. Smoke drifted from a crooked chimney. No horses out front, no tracks but old ones crusted over. Clara circled it wide, rifle low, until she was sure it wasn't an ambush. Inside, she found no trapper. The fire had been left burning low, a pot still hung above it, and in the corner a cot with a threadbare blanket folded neatly. Someone had been here, recently, but they weren't here now. She shut the door behind her and bolted it, heart still racing. She didn't touch the pot. Hunger was a liar, and poison didn't always smell like death. Instead, she stripped off her boots, peeled away her socks, and held her blistered feet toward the fire with a hiss of pain she wouldn't have let herself voice if not for the solitude. It was a risk to stop, she knew that, but her body had limits and they'd nearly been met. Out in the trees, the lawman made camp in the hollow of a downed cedar. He didn't build a fire. He sat with his coat pulled tight, eyes closed, listening. He heard the distant crack of limbs under snow, the lonely whistle of a fox. He thought of her, not by name, but by presence. That quiet, sharp-edged woman who looked like she'd walked out of some older time. He didn't know yet why he hadn't turned back. He told himself it was duty, justice. But he'd worn the badge too long to still believe the shape of a thing meant it was true. His past walked beside him, even now. A face in every flake of snow, a voice in every silence. Clara stayed in the cabin that night. Slept hard, one eye open, knife tucked beneath the pallet. At some hour near dawn, she dreamed of a hand on her shoulder, not cruel, not firm, but steady. A hand that didn't mean to take, only to understand. She woke with her heart in her throat. And 30 miles east, the lawman woke at the same hour, staring up at the stars, feeling something shift in the dark. They were moving toward each other still, not fast, not by choice, but drawn, like rivers pulled by unseen hands toward a meeting neither could name yet. The thaw came early that year, just a whisper of it, barely enough to mark, but Clara felt it. In the damp scent rising from the earth, in the way the wind softened, lost some of its bite. The snow hadn't melted, not proper, but it sagged now in patches, its edges curling like paper held to flame. Winter loosening its grip, little by little. She left the cabin before first light, not willing to press her luck. Whoever had built that fire might return, might already be watching from the trees. Clara had learned not to trust in good fortune. It usually came with a noose. She moved west still, climbing now, where the land rose into jagged hills spined with frostbitten trees. The trail had vanished entirely. What guided her now was instinct, a stubborn kind of hope and something like a memory. A map someone once sketched in dirt, long before the gallows and the guns. A hiding place, safe for a while at least, if it still existed. Her breath came ragged in the cold. Her ribs ached when she coughed. She stopped feeling her left foot sometime around noon and didn't bother checking it anymore. Pain had turned to numbness, which she knew wasn't good, but knowing and fixing were two separate things. By dusk, the sky bruised over with storm clouds. She made camp in a thicket of scrub pine, too tired to find better shelter. She hadn't eaten in over a day. Snow sifted down again, gentle now, like an apology. Far behind, but not far enough, the lawman reached the cabin she'd left behind. He didn't enter right away, circled it once, twice. He touched the firewood beside the door, still damp, still real. Inside, he found the coals cold, but not long dead. She'd been here, maybe hours ago. He knelt near the ashes, noticed the cot disturbed, the smallest print of a heel in the dust by the wall. He didn't speak, didn't curse, just lowered his head, closed his eyes a moment, then rose. He could have turned back then, let the trail fade. No one would have known. But he didn't. That night he camped beside a fallen log, wrapped tight in oilskin, one arm beneath his head, the badge tucked into his coat like it might burn him if left too close to the air. He dreamed of his brother, of blood in the snow, of the shot he hadn't taken, the woman who'd fled and the justice he'd sworn to bring but never quite defined. The next morning brought fog thick as wool. Clara woke blind to the world beyond her own breath. The silence felt heavier, more pointed. She packed slow, wary, ears straining. Something in the stillness warned her. She didn't see him until she crested a ridge, and there he stood. Not 10 paces down, one hand resting on the saddle horn of a horse near spent, snow crusted to its fetlocks. His eyes met hers, and in them she saw no gun yet drawn, no smile, no accusation. Just a man more tired than angry. A man carrying something even heavier than the badge he wore. They didn't speak, not yet. Clara's heart beat once hard, then twice. She stepped back, slow, measured. He didn't follow. She turned and ran, not wild, not reckless, just with the kind of clarity that comes when the end is no longer abstract. Behind her, the lawman watched her disappear into the fog. He did not give chase. He just stood there, breath misting in the quiet, the snow beginning to fall again, soft and slow, like something wholly trying to start again. The fog held for 3 days. In that suspended world, sound traveled strange and slow. Clara moved through it like a shadow, silent, her every step muffled beneath the thawing crust of snow. Trees loomed like shipwrecks in the white sea. Her thoughts ran lean, no room now for grief or guilt, only movement, breath, the need to survive. She found an old mining road, long abandoned, rutted with time and overgrowth. It led her to the remnants of a claim, a rusted winch, a shed half-collapsed, a mine entrance swallowed in brambles. No footprints, no smoke, it would do. Inside the shed, Clara set her back against a beam and listened, nothing but wind and the drip of snowmelt from the eaves. She let her rifle rest beside her and pulled her knees up, arms around them, heart slowly finding a steadier beat. Her boots were ruined now. She wrapped her feet in cloth torn from the lining of her coat, and each step was a gamble. That night she lit no fire. Instead, she sat in the dark and let the cold speak to her. Not cruelly, but plainly, reminding her what she'd chosen, what she'd run from, and what she might yet find if she could only last a little longer. Her eyes drifted shut, then open again. In the dark, she remembered the boy. The sheriff's son had been no one's fool. 17, sharp-eyed and full of the kind of restless kindness that made you believe things could change. He hadn't tried to save her. He just stood by her when no one else would, and he'd paid for it. Clara pressed her hand to her mouth, not to weep. She'd done her weeping long ago, but to steady herself, to stay quiet. Some ghosts needed silence to be born. Miles away, in another slice of wilderness, the lawman lost the trail. Snow and fog had conspired to erase her path, and for the first time in weeks, he felt adrift. He made camp beneath a cliff face, wind shearing down in bursts. He fed his horse the last of the oats and rationed his jerky with the care of a man who'd been hungry before. That night he unwrapped the badge from its leather pouch and stared at it. The metal was cold, tarnished at the edges. He turned it in his palm as though it might answer something. It didn't. He remembered a town far south where he'd once been a deputy. The sheriff had been fair and the people mostly good. He'd believed in law then, in the shape it gave to grief and chaos. But then the wrong man died, and the right one walked free, and belief soured into something bitter and quiet. He hadn't been chasing Clara for justice. Not really. He'd been chasing the shape of the thing he'd lost, and in doing so, he'd followed her into a kind of penance he didn't fully understand. The next morning he rode again, not fast, not with fury, just forward. Back in the mountains, Clara woke to birdsong. Thin and distant but real. She stood slowly, legs stiff, and stepped outside the shed. The fog was lifting. The snow had receded in patches, revealing dark earth and the early blush of crocus near the base of a rock. For the first time in weeks, Clara felt something like hope stir beneath the ache. She didn't know where she would go, not truly, but she knew she wasn't ready to stop. And neither, though he hadn't seen her in days, was the lawman. Spring was coming, not kind, not easy, but coming all the same. And the land between them was shrinking. The thaw broke fully 2 days later. Sunlight spilled down the ridges like gold poured from the hands of God, and the snow gave way beneath it, melting in rivulets that raced along root and stone. The pines wept, and the earth, long buried, began to breathe again. Clara stood at the edge of a high pass, boots soaked, hands calloused and red, watching the valley open below her. What lay there wasn't town nor trail, but something wilder. An old trading post turned ghost, shacks caved in, fences broken by time and elk. Yet she saw in it not ruin, but refuge. She descended slow, ribs tight from days without real food. The sun warmed her face as she walked, and the air no longer bit. It only held the crispness of water and stone and sap. When she reached the first collapsed wall, she sat, back against the timber, and let her pack drop beside her. She didn't expect company. But she heard his horse before she saw him, hooves cautious against thaw-soft earth, and when she turned, he was already there. He hadn't drawn his gun, neither had she. They stared a long while, the silence between them not sharp this time, but searching. "You're limping," he said at last, voice rough from cold and quiet. Clara didn't answer, just looked down at her boots, the tattered cloth wrapped round her feet like worn prayers. He dismounted slow, let his horse wander to drink from a shallow creek. He didn't step closer, only stood there, hands at his sides, not readying for a fight, not reaching for peace either, just waiting. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. "Truth," he said, "but not just yours." The wind picked up, sending pine needles skittering across the hard-packed dirt. "I buried him myself," she said after a while. "He died trying to help. I didn't ask him to, but I didn't stop him either." "I know," the lawman said. "Not at first, but I know now." He looked older up close. Not by years, but by weight, grief shaped into the lines around his eyes, the set of his shoulders. Clara recognized that weight, carried her own version of it. "I thought I had to bring you in," he said, "to make something right, but it wasn't ever that simple." "It never is." He sat on a stone nearby, not too close. The light caught in his hair, graying at the temples, and for the first time, Clara saw the man beneath the pursuit, someone who'd lost more than he'd dared to mourn. "I don't want to run anymore," she said quietly. He nodded, eyes on the creek. "Then don't." She laughed, the sound brittle with disbelief. "And what? Settle here, with ghosts and crows." "I've followed worse dreams." They didn't speak for a while, just sat with the ruin of the trading post around them, the slow drip of meltwater from the eaves, the hush of birds returning to the high country. He rose after a time, walked to his saddlebag and pulled out a small tin, biscuits, rough and dry but still edible. He held one out without a word. Clara took it. They ate in silence. Later, she helped him build a fire in the shell of an old cabin, the two of them moving like folks who'd known each other longer than just a chase. She saw how careful he was with wood, how he banked the flame with reverence. He saw how she kept her back to a wall, eyes always to the door. They didn't mention it. When night fell, they shared the fire. Neither reached for weapons, neither spoke of tomorrow. The world didn't need to understand them. The law didn't need to approve. They weren't beginning a life, not yet. They were only ending a flight. And in that, there was something sacred. The snow fell again, light this time, a benediction. Two souls, no longer fleeing, just breathing in the hush between what had been and what might still come.